My computer sucks. That's why we're late. But we're also talking about a creepy Scarjo robot. I don't know, Speedy Gonzalez, baseball's opening day, Lost Highway. We're going to have an interview with Barry Gifford. Stay tuned. And welcome once again to the Movies and Stuff show. My name is Dan, and joining me is a man who celebrates one and only holiday, and that holiday happens to be opening day of baseball. That is Abe.
I know that's a joke, but it's actually closer to the truth than you can imagine.
It's actually pretty close. Yeah. Baseball time is upon us. Now that our audience has just been waiting for 8 minutes for my computer to stop acting like an idiot, we can disenfranchise them some more by talking some baseball. Baseball is back. Of course, a lot of people who watch the show know that both Abe and I are baseball fans. I happen to root for the Nye Mets as my favorite squadron.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. Little Simpsons reference there for those that watch The Simpsons. Abe happens to be a fan of the Kansas City Royals. The Mets and Royals, they kind of had a thing in the World Series against each other, and the Royals won. Womp womp.
Yeah, they did. They're 1-5.
Yeah, they played well. And for the first time ever, starting the season off, two teams that played in the World Series, they're starting this season series against each other. Royals took game 1. Mets took game 2. Yep. I believe the score was 2-0.
2-0, yep.
Noah Syndergaard.
Yeah, but Syndergaard had to feel like a piece of shit that Escobar got a triple off of him. I love that.
So that's what's going on in baseball. But what do I saw Ned Yost was kind of criticizing starting off against the Mets. What do you think? You like that?
That's really weird that you're starting the season with interleague play. That's really, really weird.
Yeah.
I'm not really necessarily a fan of it. Now, they did their 2-game series. Now they're both off for 2 days.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Very weird.
Yeah. Any thoughts in general? Is there any predictions so far? Any who do you favor? Who might be a dark horse to be really good this year? What are your just day 1, day 2? What are your general thoughts?
Well, I was thinking the Mets were going to win the East, but if that's how they're going to play defense, I don't know. The Nationals might give them a run for their money. Yeah, I don't know. It's so up in the air right now. It's really going to be interesting. I think the Blue Jays probably take the East in the American League. I don't know. I think the Royals still have a shot in the Central, but it's going to be a very competitive division.
If I had to guess on a dark horse per se, maybe the Red Sox could sneak in there and take the East. Maybe. I'm not too sold on this guy named David Price. You're familiar with him.
Yeah, I am. So I'm glad he's gone.
I'm not too sold on him, but maybe they're just sad that you're saying the Boston Red Sox might be a dark horse, might be an underdog, if you will.
Yeah. There'll be lots more. Yeah, there'll be so much more to talk about. It's so hard to project anything.
Don't we already know who's winning it this year, though?
Who's that? Cubs?
No, San Francisco.
Oh, God. No.
It's an even year. Even year. All right. I'm hoping the Mets just do well. A lot of expectations on the Mets to make it back to the World Series or win the World Series. It's hard. It's hard to get back to a World Series back to back. You guys ended up winning one, so that's awesome. But it's hard to get back. It's really tough. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And welcome back, our audience. I just tuned us out for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we're done now.
Yep. No more baseball talk the rest of the show, promise. And I can assure you this topic will either enthrall you or possibly creep you out, maybe both. Some dude invented a Scarjo robot.
Hell yeah.
It is creepy as hell looking.
It is.
Graphic designer named Ricky Moss spent $50,000 to build his own Scarjo. So we're this much closer to Spielberg's AI now, aren't we?
This close. Yeah.
It's close.
This is like the Model T of sex robots.
Oh, Ford would be so happy.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I really think this is what we're looking at. I mean, could you have envisioned?
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, could you have envisioned a Lamborghini from looking at the Model T? No, it's a step, and we all know what. We all know why he's building a Scarjo bot. We all know.
No, it's not to take out for a nice dinner.
No,
have lovely conversation. Man, it was really creepy. Did you see the video of it talking?
Yes, I did.
Do I have to call it, or do I have to refer to it as her? We're going to come across some weird robot laws soon, too. We don't realize how bizarre that's going to be.
Oh, yeah, of course there's going to be robot laws. I'm tiptoeing right up to the line of saying some offensive stuff, but...
I know where you're going with it, too, yeah.
Fuck it, I'll just say it. Okay. Since the beginning of time, men have relied on technology, or hoped technology would get them out from under the thumb of women. Like that they have to work for it that hard. And this is it. This is the last lap of this race. Ever since the first caveman realized he'd give all his rocks to some cave woman, that's what they've been striving for. This is it. This is actually, I think this is going to have serious ramifications on human sexuality. I mean, like, more than we could possibly imagine. I really believe that.
Now, it would be ironic if the first male version of it does happen to look like Jude Law. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that would be super kind of ironic and kind of cool if that happens. I'd be like, I'd be up for that. I'd be like, all right, you know what? I'm a huge fan of the movie AI. I know there's a lot of people that are. You're on AI, right?
I'm on AI. Yeah.
Right.
I feel like it doesn't live up to Spielberg or Kubrick. It's kind of lesser than both of them. This is my 2 cents, Dan.
You're allowed to have 2 cents. That's why we have a show, right?
Is that it?
I don't know. I don't know anymore. Why do we have a show? Because a couple people watch it. Anyone in the comments right now?
Oh, yeah. They're all talking about robot gender identity. Make sandwiches, of course. Abe just started the next wave of masculism. Ponyboy is saying, oh, don't forget about Lars and the Real Girl.
Yes.
Yep.
Good point.
Yeah, we're getting some love for AI, too, from Ronan.
All right, good. If D was here, I'm sure we would not. D's not a fan.
D is not a fan.
He's not a fan. Hello, everyone in the chat. I'm glad you joined us. I'm sorry that we were late, as I mentioned in the cold opening. Went to launch my computer. It decided that it didn't want to.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Right. Yeah, it is what it is.
Last topic.
What are we talking about?
It doesn't have to be the last topic. I guess topic 3, a Speedy Gonzalez movie. In the category of why is this being made, that it kind of intersects with how racist will this be. Warner Brothers is putting out a feature-length cartoon version of Speedy Gonzalez movie. Why not? Sure.
Do you think it's going to be racist at all?
Yes.
I mean, I
the
know
character is inherently racist.
but I just have this feeling like they're going to sanitize him and make him as safe as humanly possible.
I mean, the only way that they could like sanitize it is if they make it a white dude named like Speedy Jones.
I haven't seen a trailer yet.
It's gonna be horrible. And
There's no fucking way they're gonna make it racist. Like, I mean, you can be accused of racism without even being a racist. I mean, this is the world we live in right now. This is going to be run through so many different committees to assure it's as non-offensive as possible.
I hope the central plot, is that Speedy Gonzalez has to run over the wall that separates Mexico and the United States.
Would that be racist then? I mean, like, I really think that they are going to do their best to avoid the horrible stereotypical Mexican jokes from the 60s. I really think they're going. I can't believe they're going in naive, thinking they can pull this off.
No.
I
mean, they've had to have thought. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, in theory, I loved those old Warner Brothers cartoons.
Yeah.
The Bugs Bunny and the Daffy Duck. But I mean, you look back and they were just so offensive. they were so horribly offensive. They made a lot of racist jokes back then.
They did. They did. But it was a different time then, I guess. I don't know. It was racist, but it's like this weird time capsule of where we were in America at the time. That we could, at least, they were making those jokes.
Yeah, it's such a weird fine line. I have a tough time discussing it because I couldn't imagine not having the Bad News Bears in my life as a kid. I loved that movie. Bad News Bears.
Right.
Loved it. Horribly offensive. Horribly offensive.
Yeah, it is, but we were also a little bit more fucking relaxed in those days, too.
I know.
We could laugh at each other and laugh at ourselves. And now you're getting PTSD from, something like this. I'm not so...
That's what I'm saying. It's a fine line, and I don't like walking it because, again, like it's hard to kind of take your mind and kind of jump into someone else and see how they're feeling or how they're, someone's going to be offended about something.
Oh, always.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have... Our show is probably considered offensive.
I find that hard to believe. Maybe after the sex robot thing, maybe. But, I just don't know.
My old podcast would have been considered...
Yeah. I would have seen, yeah.
I don't know. It's tough. I don't like. Oh man, I'm really gonna put my foot in the water here by saying this. I don't like the concept of this pussification, if you will, of culture.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it when it was a little bit rougher around the edges. I felt like the 80s. The 80s still had some of that kind of, rough around the edges. I mean, I watched RoboCop as a kid. You're not watching RoboCop nowadays as a kid.
Oh, no.
It's not going to happen. Well, because they don't make films like RoboCop anymore, first off. You think of, like, the most, like, I don't know, what? In recent years, John Wick maybe, or Deadpool, or, like, I guess the Raid movies are kind of, these action... Still... RoboCop. Something special.
Yes, it was. And you're right. Everything's so corporate. Everything is so safe. They don't want to offend anybody if they can help it. And even when they're trying to be as non-offensive as they can be, they still end up, fucking up. Because remember, Joss Whedon got chased off of Twitter for Black Widow saying she felt like a monster. They're like, oh my God. And Joss Whedon's one of them. Oh, yeah. Joss Whedon attacked Jurassic Park without seeing it. It's ridiculous. This whole everyone's so sensitive is just so fucking ridiculous.
Should I ask, how do you think it happened? Is there an answer of how it happened? Was it one person?
Oh, of course not. I mean, it started with the parents. Yeah. I don't know how or why it started, but everything became, everything had to be safer and safer for the kids. And then, participation trophies show up and shit like that. And that math, when I forget what it was called, but when, you didn't have to get the right answer in math. You just kind of had to do the problem correctly.
Oh, participation trophy. You ever got a participation trophy?
No, I've never got a participation trophy.
No. I've gotten last place trophies.
Yeah, we struggle.
It's a horse's ass. Toilet bowl.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Oh, boy.
All right.
Puck Propaganda is saying it's the social media's fault. It's Christian's fault. And Tom is saying that Joss Whedon made a movie that doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
Oh man,
we're off to a rocking start tonight.
We are off to a rocking start. I hope people stick around. We're going to talk about David Lynch's Lost Highway.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, how did these two just blend together so well?
After that, we're going to air an interview we did with the co-writer of the film, Barry Gifford.
He's offensive too. There's trigger warnings. There's going to be some colorful language in here.
True.
Yeah.
True. Not as colorful as Dan Knopf, but
No.
colorful.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. When we return, some crazy-ass Lost Highway theories from that guy right there. Stay tuned.
It locked up again. The same damn spot.
See, you know,
We're
I meant
just
that guy right there, but
we're snake bit right now.
whatever.
Yeah, it's just I don't know why. You know, last time it was a QuickTime file that locked up. Now it's MP4.
We're doomed.
We are because it literally just skips over. Fuck it, just talk it. All right.
Yeah, whatever. You know what that was? Wasn't that good enough? That was a good enough break. I don't even know why we need a break.
We don't really need a break.
We don't need a break. This goes back to just me like trying to make things fancy and destroying it.
We're gonna get that part figured out. I'm taking a little vacation. I've got 2.5 weeks or whatever to figure this out. So
I have a week to figure out how we're gonna do next week's show.
this falls under not my problem.
Nope. We're gonna attempt to have a show next week. Well, I'm going to attempt to have a show next week.
Oh.
After we're gonna talk Lost Highway in a minute. Let me just go into this. After like successfully figuring a whole bunch of stuff out in like a couple hours time and being on top of the world, it's like a week later now, and I'm like, oh crap, I still need to like figure out a whole bunch of more shit next week's show.
It was such perfect timing too. Such perfect timing because your time has become a little bit more limited lately.
Yeah, I've some stuff going on that's been taking away some time of course, but
we don't want to get into too much. But I'll just say
no. Yeah, whatever. But I'm just saying, like now I realize I got a week to figure this all out. Worst case scenario, and by the way, my co-host next week's going to be my buddy Marty. He's going to join us. He actually called into the Batman v Superman episode last week. So, yeah, he's going to be joining me. So worst case scenario, it literally might just be live from Marty's couch.
Oh, well, okay.
I might just have a camera. Go veggie lasagna style. It works for them.
It does.
Would we get sued by Tom? Would Tom sue me?
Tom is actually offering you some of their unused veggie lasagna scripts for next week.
Excellent.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. It just
Show
has.
is done.
I think I've seen the veggie lasagna scripts. They're just like, a couple, talk Iran, talk Syria. I've seen how Tom rolls.
For those of you watching that have no idea what we're talking about, Tom does the Veggie Lasagna show Monday nights on this YouTube channel. So you should watch that.
Yeah.
You should watch that. You should watch our show on Tuesday nights. Are we doing a debate show on Thursday? Is there a debate show on Thursday?
There is going to be a debate show Thursday. Yep.
Okay. So that's happening.
Yes, it is. It's going to be Tom, myself, Sean, and Mr. Puck Propaganda, hopefully. But we also have a backup just in case.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's got the whole Jacob deGrom thing going on with the... Doesn't know if he's going to start the home opener.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to get into Puck's personal life too much on the air here.
No.
He's paternity tests, strip club, things like that.
Well, this might be the last time we ever see him again, so we have to get him on.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, let's talk about Lost Highway. That's
Highway.
what the show's about this week, apparently.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, we're going to talk about Lost Highway.
Yes. First time ever.
Never done it before.
Nope.
I try to go into every episode where we do a movie review prepared. I have a pretty strong outline of the topics I want to talk about. I figured because it's Lost Highway, we're not going to do that. We're just gonna let it go.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing all this whole show so far. Yeah.
No preparation.
Yeah.
I'll just mention that I was 16 when I saw this. I rented it on VHS. Absolutely loved it. Didn't fully understand it. I don't think I still fully understand it, so I'm going to defer to you to explain it to me in a couple of minutes. But it's fine. It made me want to watch it more. And it's one of those films that, if if you watch it the first time, you don't understand it. You could either say, "Well, fuck this film," or you can be like, "That was awesome.
Yeah,
I gotta watch it again."
I don't know that you can have any other reaction.
Right, right. So I get it. I get why people couldn't get into Lynch or get into Lost Highway, and I think Lost Highway. We talked about Fire Walk with Me, about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And I kind of feel like Lost Highway built upon a lot of the themes that Lynch was working on in Fire Walk with Me, and a lot of the visual elements, and a lot of this, even plot in a way, was Lost Highway. And then after Lost Highway, I kind of feel that Mulholland Drive, like, did Lost Highway to the next level as well. Like, it was just kind of building upon these things.
Absolutely.
I think Blue Velvet is my favorite Lynch film of all time. I think, despite that, though, I hold a closer connection to Lost Highway because it was my introduction to Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
It was watching Twin Peaks marathon, and it was Lost Highway. That was my true introduction to David Lynch. So that's kind of like where I'm at with Lost Highway. And then when I first saw it, you saw it in theaters, right?
Oh yeah, I saw it in theaters. Very little theater, very uncomfortable art house theater. 1996, right? No, it was a little bit later than that. I'm trying to think when it was actually in the theater that I saw it at, because it was the first run. No, it was 97, right around there. So I was 20? Yeah, so a little bit older than you.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was it was a cramped theater. It was a crappy theater, but man, it was so much fun. And this is my first chance to see Lynch post Twin Peaks. That's when I came into him. Twin Peaks said it was already done. Fire Walk with Me was already done. And this was my first shot. And boy, howdy, I loved it. And like you don't grasp it on the first viewing at all. It's impossible, I think.
It's funny too is I had heard of the movie because of the soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
that's what led me to the movie. The soundtrack. I was a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, so right. Trent Reznor did that. Great David Bowie song on it. Had Marilyn Manson, Rammstein. One of the only Smashing Pumpkins songs that I really like.
What was that one?
Yeah. So it's one of the few Smashing Pumpkins songs I actually like. And I mean, what clinched it, what brought it all together was that Angelo Badalamenti score, the musical score.
It was really good.
Just really sensational. And I love his work, and I'm glad that him and Lynch are a team. But the film is it's a beautifully shot film, I think. And I also think that Lynch extracts stellar performances from everyone. I think the scene with Loja as Mr. Eddie, where he beats the tailgating driver, it's absolutely hilarious. It's one of the funniest things, but it's also terrifying. And just in general, the first half of the film feels like a horror film, and I just absolutely love it. And rewatching Fire Walk with Me, I also felt horror elements from that Lost Highway kind of built upon as well. So I thought that's really is a terrifying film in many ways.
Oh, it is. It is no doubt. It's a horrifying film. Absolutely. Even just on a casual level, just on the surface level, it's still a troubling film. But when you start to get into the concepts beneath it, you realize, holy shit, it's really fucked up.
Well, we'll get into the concepts beneath it. I say this often that we're lovers of film. We're not
scholars.
We're not critics. We're not film analysts. We enjoy talking about films. That's who we are. So there's information out there about Psychogenic Fugue. It's been out there for some time. First time I really either heard it or understood it is when we interviewed Barry Gifford, which we'll play in a little bit. So I didn't when I watched it, I wasn't sure if it was an actual metamorphosis that was happening, or if it was a mental disorder, or something. I wasn't entirely sure, and I probably still am not entirely sure. So I need you to break this film. You need to make me understand this film from your point of view.
Okay. From my point of view, and that's all this is. This is my Lost Highway kind of hypothesis. What actually happens is Fred's suspicious of his wife cheating on him. He presumably confirms that she's cheating on him at this hotel. He waits for Renee to leave the hotel, confronts her lover that we assume is Dick Laurent. He kills Dick, leaves his body in the desert. Not long after, he OJs Renee and chops her up into little pieces in their bedroom. Now, after that, Fred's mind is reeling from this experience. And so he basically creates, I don't know how to say this, a mental safe space to shield himself from the horrors he's committed.
I like that.
Yeah, if you've seen Sherlock ever, he has that mind palace where he keeps all the information so he can search it. Fred does like the opposite of that. Fred creates his mind home that instead of storing memories, he's built this up to protect himself from what he's done, from the outside world. Look at how the opening shot, there's that buzzer, Dick Laurent's dead. Watch how awkwardly Fred moves through this house. He's looking like this. He's just craning to try and see. He doesn't want to go outside. He's a prisoner in this home right now. Because if he leaves, then the outside world, or his outside knowledge of what happened might get to him. And then these videotapes start coming, which is first just a shot of the home, but then it's a shot of the home, and then it's inside the home. The truth of what's happened is starting to break through. And finally, he gets that last tape that shows him he killed Renee. These were repressed memories trying to penetrate into this Fred delusion, fantasy that he's created. Like, I'm not a shrink. I don't know how to say if it's the id or the ego or the super ego. But I believe that's what it is, that he's created this delusion. And as he goes on, obviously, his delusion starts to fall apart, It just can't hold up because, it's still there. He killed his fucking wife.
Right.
He tries to pretend like they have this functional relationship. He and Renee have sex, which goes badly for Fred, and then he sees the face of the mystery man on Renee. I believe the mystery man is the truth of what Fred has done, represented in his mind. As the truth for a lot of us can be a terrifying experience, especially if we're living in a life of self-delusion.
And then there's other just elements of reality that start to seep in as well.
Absolutely.
So it's basically your theory that very little of this film is actually reality.
You could probably argue those scenes I was joking last week or 2 weeks ago, that Henry Rollins stuff might be real.
Right.
You could probably argue that. But when Fred is forced to confront the fact that he's killed his wife and he's killed Dick Laurent, which is actually, I want to talk about that too. I want to ask you about that later. But when he there's nowhere else to hide. He's got to accept the fact that he killed his wife. That's when Pete shows up. That's when Fred just goes balls out with his delusion and creates an entirely new personhood. He's still sitting in his cell, but his mind is going so far to protect him from the truth that he's literally just changed into a new person. And he gets let out of jail. He gets to go live his life. Pete is just like this young, cool grease monkey dude. He's got friends, which is something we never saw Fred have. He's got a new girlfriend, Sheila. Sheila's young. I think Sheila's even kind of looks a bit Renee-ish with the same hair color, the same nails. But most of all, the difference between Renee and Sheila is Sheila desperately wants Pete to like her. But Pete can't because it's still Fred. And Fred has just this burning desire to love Renee. He still loves Renee, even though he killed her. But the problem in Fred's mind, is that Renee's untrustworthy. The path of Renee always leads to her cheating on him and him being forced to kill her.
Right.
So we create Alice, which is a new and improved Renee. She's much more personable. And just like Sheila, she's instantly attracted to Pete. So this should be easy. This should be smooth sailing for Pete here. But, of course, Alice is still Renee. And so Fred's perception of who Renee is still going to slowly build in. Pete's Alice is so similar to Renee. You recall, like they both got into this... They both had the same stories about getting a job at Moke's, but Alice was forced into it at gunpoint. She's a helpless victim, whereas Renee embraced it.
Embraced it. Yep.
Yeah, Pete Fred is trying desperately to make Alice an innocent, but slowly but surely, Renee's conniving, Renee's coldness, Renee's cheating on himness always develops. So the Pete delusion starts to break down too. I mean, you'll notice that whenever the delusion starts to break down or something gets too close, they'll both get nosebleeds.
Right.
Yeah, and they're mirrored nosebleeds too, which is actually really interesting. So Pete's reality is crumbling. Fred's bubbling to the surface. Alice becomes more and more like Renee. And then the last part is when Pete and Alice have sex. And that's it. When she says, "You'll never have me," that's it. The delusion is totally shattered. He can't pretend anymore, and he becomes Fred again. And then the mystery man just, screaming at him. Her name isn't Alice. Her name is Renee. If she told you her name's Alice, she's lying. I mean, just desperately trying to get the Fred to accept the fact of what he's done, of murdering his wife and her lover. And then, we go off to the flashback sequences at the Lost Highway Hotel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Fred is finally coming to grips with this, seeing what he did. And the mystery man and Fred killed Dick Laurent. And then the mystery man whispers something to Fred. And then that's it, he's gone. Mm-hmm. There's no more need for him to be there because he's accepted the truth of what's happened.
Right.
Fred then goes back to his place, tells him Dick Laurent's dead, which I don't think, because this is all going on inside of someone's mind, we've got to throw time out the window. I think we're looking at different levels of consciousness trying to reach other levels. I think all Fred is trying to do there is trying to get himself to admit fully that he killed his wife.
Right.
But he does it by saying Dick Laurent is dead, which is, I actually think is really interesting. Why wouldn't he say Renee is dead? Or why wouldn't he say Alice is dead? I find that to be the interesting question right here. Why Dick Laurent?
Because Dick Laurent was the first person he killed.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's my guess. Okay. Is that he killed Dick Laurent as the first person that he killed, and that's what kind of started the whole chain reaction off anyway.
Okay.
Him finding out about Dick Laurent and then killing him. So
I do wonder if by saying Dick Laurent is dead, he's trying to accept the fact that he killed Dick. But Renee dying, that's
it's possible. Yeah, no, it's quite possible that he's still trying to almost deny. Well, he might still kind of almost trying to be denying that.
Interesting. Yeah.
That he's accepted part of the blame, but he hasn't been able to fully accept it. So maybe it means that he's going to have another break from reality, another fugue at some point. Mm-hmm. And you hit on a lot of great things. And it's funny, too, I remember I watched this movie once. It was probably maybe my second or third time. And my theory at that time was that it was the opposite, is that Fred was in Pete's mind, and Pete was actually the central, because there's like this one scene where Pete's parents and his girlfriend are yelling at him in the street, and there's kind of like lightning going on, and it seems to be like a quick shot of a dead body. So I was like, oh, well, maybe it's like Pete was in some kind of like serious accident, and as a result, he created Fred. And that was like, one of the theories that I had for a while. But after viewing it again, I was like, no, that's that's not holding up.
I think in the Pete delusion, and maybe do you remember how when Pete's parents seem to know exactly what's going on? Mm-hmm. Do you think that like in Fred's new delusion here, that he's given his parents kind of the knowledge of what's happened? Because parents will never betray you. Parents will never hurt you. They'll protect you. I wonder that.
That's possible. Yeah. The good thing about this movie too is just the use of mirroring. There's a great theme about mirrors and almost like opposite sides of the coin or reverse sides of the coin. Mm-hmm. You touched upon it with Arquette's character. Patricia Arquette's character, Renee, is submissive. Yeah. Allows the story to unfold around her. Alice is aggressive. She pushes the story forward. Renee has dark hair. Alice has the blonde hair. They're almost like the two sides of the same coin. Yeah. And then you have the mirroring between Fred and Pete that goes on.
Absolutely. When Fred goes to bed in the prison, he's on this side. When Pete wakes up, he's on this side.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's great, and even like the sax breakdown. Fred, when Pete's working in the car shop.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the radio.
It's really upsetting him because, again, that's like a break in reality. That's reality seeping through. That's him playing the saxophone. That's his song. That's him. So that's seeping into reality. He's getting very upset about it. I love the circular structure of the movie. Talking about mirrors. It's almost like we start off with the lanes in the road, Bowie's "I'm Deranged," and it ends in the same way. It's very circular. You have the element of Fred, the Dick Laurent is dead, like we mentioned before on the intercom.
Yeah.
So just a lot of great themes going on in this film that I think also enforce your theory a bit. I do think that the circular nature of it ties into the fact that, and even like what we were discussing before, is there's a possibility that he's never going to be cured, and this feud could happen again and again and again. And even though he's making breakthroughs and the reality is accepting it, there still is a chance that he could break again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's people that hypothesize that the end is him being killed in the electric chair, and that's all the smoke and everything. And, I mean, there's nothing to prove or disprove it, so I mean, it's valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. I don't think he's capable. I don't know if he's strong enough, to just own up to the fact that he killed his wife.
Yeah. And I think the cinematography as well, it's done in such a way that it emphasizes some kind of like this alternate reality or fantasy world that's in Fred Pete's head. Visually, it's a bit hypnotic and trippy.
Yeah.
So that plays into this concept of this isn't real. This has got to be a full on delusion. And the very moments that are less hypnotic and trippy, those are probably the elements that are reality. That's why I was when you mentioned the whole prison thing, I was like, I kind of feel like the prison thing might actually be true because it's less, it's less bizarre than a lot of the other stuff that's going on. You would think that if the prison was really a delusion, there'd be, just something next level going on there. It was actually pretty straightforward.
No, it was. I agree. I was joking about the Henry.
Yeah.
You were talking about one thing I want to get out there real quick is you were talking about the soundtrack too. That song when Fred and Renee Pete, Fred and Alice have sex on the beach is the Song to the Siren by This Mortal Coil, not on the soundtrack. No. But you're right. It is shot so wonderfully the way they're having sex in front of the headlights on that. Very powerful moment.
Yeah.
And so sad. Like this is
it's a very sad film. This is a very sad film.
He killed her, and this is what he killed her, and he regrets it so much. But this is what he wants so bad is to do this again. To embrace her.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, I mentioned it earlier. Lost Highway gets built upon even more so in Mulholland Drive, and a lot of these motifs, a lot of this sadness is carried over more so. Mulholland Drive is an incredibly sad movie. We'll talk about it someday.
Oh yeah.
This is someday we're going to talk about Mulholland Drive, and it's a very, very sad film. Yeah. And I do think that there is a level of sadness in Lost Highway as well, and Mulholland Drive amps it up a notch. What are the people saying? Anything?
Yeah. I mean, they're Ponyboy said he's nodding in agreement to us. He thinks we've got it. Just people listening right now. Ronan has committed to watching the film now. He's convinced.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, you know what? Then, do you have anything else?
Not really. No.
All right. I think we nailed it this time. I mean, this first time that we've done it.
Yeah, we've never talked about this film before.
Never talked about this film before, officially.
No.
So I think you got it, man. I like it. I think great job kind of deciphering it and putting this all together. Love it. I love where your head's at right now.
Every now and then, broken clocks right so, twice a day. Yeah.
Don't have a fugue. All right. We're going to close out another episode of the Movies and Stuff show. Stick around to check out the interview we did with Barry Gifford about writing Lost Highway and working with David Lynch. He also wrote the novel for Wild at Heart.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So we talk a bit about Wild at Heart with him as well. So I love it. I love talking to people that work with David Lynch.
Oh, I do too.
It's great. So we've talked to a few, and it's great stuff. We're going to be hanging out in the chat as well. So please make sure to like this video, comment below, subscribe to us for more awesome content. Follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. We mentioned it earlier. Abe will be off next week. I'm going to attempt, the key word is attempt, to do a show with Marty next week. We're going to talk about random entertainment stuff, and we're also going to count down our top 10 favorite baseball movies. And Abe, you're going to give me your 5 as well.
I might call into the show.
Maybe you'll call in. Maybe. See how I handle that. But enjoy your time off in the French Riviera.
Oh, yes.
Final words?
You and me, mister, we can really out-ugly them sons of bitches.
Hell yeah. Later.
See you guys. Joining us now on the show, author, poet, screenplay writer, Barry Gifford. Barry, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to talk to you.
We're just going to get this one out of the way right now.
I would,
yeah?
If you're doing an intro like that, I would rather you said novelist.
Novelist.
That's what I am primarily. I do write screenplays, but, only when I think it's going to be something special.
Well, I think you did that with Lost Highway. But I wanted to ask you just right out the gate, what does Lost Highway mean to you personally?
Well, it's if you're asking me about the ethos of the movie and all of that, I think that, it's funny because people would ask me what it was about, and or what category it was, let's say, especially in France, and I would say, well, it's a comedy. And a friend of mine, who was with me a couple of times when I'd answered this way, she said, "Don't say that. Stop saying that." I figured it was the best way to disarm people, in terms of, David's and my pledge to one another to avoid talking about meaning, and to describe what the film really was.
Well, I think that's probably a good choice.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, I have a question about the character of Fred/Pete. Now, I guess the obvious explanation here is that he is literally morphed into a different person. Since everyone sees him as something different. Is there something Kafka-esque going on here, or is there a split personality thing going on?
No, in fact, it's quite clinical. When David and I first wrote the screenplay, when we did the first draft, I've talked about this before, and so has he. In fact, I was just talking to David 2 days ago. We talked for quite a while. We're talking about perhaps doing something together again. In any case, it was a psychogenic fugue. And the interesting thing was, after we wrote the first draft, I had to go to Spain to do promotion for a book of mine that was being published there. So we took a little break. And it just so happened that I was flying first from San Francisco to New York, and then New York to Barcelona. In any case, on the flight to New York, I happened to be seated next to a woman. Her name was, and no doubt still is, Manuela Kogan. And she happened to be a professor at Stanford University at the time, and she was a clinical, psychiatrist. And she had no idea who I was as a novelist or a screenwriter or anything, and she didn't know who David Lynch was. She didn't watch television. She'd never heard of Twin Peaks. She'd never heard of Wild at Heart. So she was really the first person, the perfect person, really, to talk about Lost Highway and tell her basically what the plot was, what we were doing, without really knowing that it had any veracity in terms of a clinical condition. And she said right away, "Oh, that's a psychogenic fugue." And and she explained to me what a psychogenic fugue was. And then when the plane landed, and between planes, I called Lynch, and I said, "Dave, we're on the right track." And I told him exactly, what she told me. And he said, "By golly, Barry, that's great." and, and so when I got back, we wrote the second draft, and that's the end of that story.
Nice. Right or wrong, the media was trying to portray Lost Highway as like Lynch's comeback. I don't even know what he was coming back from, but did you get a feeling like that? Did he feel like he was changing or making a comeback?
No, only that he hadn't made a film in 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And, he wanted to make a movie, and, he came to me, and we, he had actually optioned my book Night People, and he had that for a year or more, and he really wanted to make a movie based on it, and but couldn't quite figure out exactly what he wanted to do with it. And I said, well, every once in a while one of us has half of an original thought. Why don't we just write something original? And he said, well, I really like these two lines from the book, one of which was one woman says to another, "We're just a couple of Apaches riding wild on the Lost Highway," something like that. And I said, well, that's fine. I mean, Lost Highway is not an original title anyway. It was a Hank Williams song. And I said, so we can use that. And then the other sentence he liked was, "You and me, Mr. Eddie," as it turns out. It's spoken by the character of Mr. Eddie in Lost Highway. "You and me, mister, we can really out-ugly them some bitches, can't we?"
Oh.
And I said, well, we can find a place for that. And, I wrote those sentences. So, let's just incorporate them into whatever it is that we come up with. And, of course, we did. So, I don't see that it was a comeback movie. What did he have to come back from, for Christ's sake? He just hadn't made a movie for a few years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, when you talk about the media, that's like, are we supposed to pay attention to what the media says? The only people who pay attention to what the media says are, maybe some people would go see the movie, maybe some people wouldn't read the book, maybe some people wouldn't do this or that. And as far as the film business is concerned, all that matters is, how much money did it make? How much money
Right.
did your last film make? Or even in the book business, it's often, how many copies did you sell last time? But, we're going to go ahead and do what we're going to do no matter what.
Precisely. Yeah, no, totally. And, it really is just a great screenplay, and it's a movie that I have loved for, many, many years now. Is there anything that was in your screenplay that either got cut or wasn't filmed? Anything particularly that stands out to you that says, I kind of wish that still made the final cut of the film?
No, nothing got cut that, as far as I was concerned, that should have remained in the film. The thing is that when Dave and I sat down together and watched the first cut, it was 3.5 hours long or whatever it was, I don't know. Anyway, we both agreed about the same 20 minutes that should be cut out of the film. And, that was a no-brainer. We just saw that. And so it had to be cut down. I don't know what the final length of the film was, but whatever it was 20 minutes longer than the final running time. So nothing got cut out that was essential. No, and a screenplay, I mean, David always says a screenplay is like a blueprint. Well, I think a little more of the screenplay than that. But it is basically, this is your plan, and then you put the dialogue in, and then things change as you film, I mean, you're always making changes. People are making adjustments. Sometimes something that you wrote, a line of dialogue or whatever, doesn't really sound right coming out of an actor's mouth, and so you make that kind of adjustment. And as far as Lost Highway was concerned, I mean, I sat next to Dave during 95% of the filming, and was writing extra, different dialogue as we went along here and there. And so it was really an organic, project. And, it was funny a few years ago, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, and I was in Paris and I was doing an appearance somewhere. And anyway, they said, well, Lost Highway is showing at the Action Française, which is, right down the street from where I was. And they said, would you come over and introduce the film? It's sold out, this, that, and the other. This is, of course, years after the film had originally come out, and they said it was just named one of the 50 best films of the 20th century by Cahiers du Cinéma or Positif or one of the magazines. And I said, well, that's very nice. And, it's really a surprise how things work out. You do a piece of work, whether it's you write a novel or you make a film, and you put it out there in the world. And, really the first reaction to it, like now, all anybody cares about a movie is how much box office did it do the first weekend. That's a terrible way to live. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you just have to hope that it has some legs and it endures, and thanks to people like you, Lost Highway does endure. And, certainly Dave and I are very pleased. I'm sure I can speak for him in that regard. In fact, we were just talking about it the other day. So, thanks.
Well, you're very welcome. Two people that didn't quite get the movie and I guess didn't want it to endure were Siskel and Ebert. And Lost Highway used that on their poster. I remember that. 2 thumbs down, Siskel and Ebert. And they didn't get the joke. What was your reaction to that advertising tactic?
What's the joke? Actually, it was funny because in David's critical history, it was always Ebert that disliked David's films and Siskel who championed David. I don't know whether Gene, who I knew since kindergarten, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
With some big gaps in between. I think in a way he champions, some of David's work as the film critic for the Chicago Tribune, simply because Ebert hated it. I don't know, because they really disliked each other. I know there's a film out now about Ebert and all that, but I like Gene. Gene was an honest person, He really was. And I think October Films decided that, they would, play that card and put in the review from Siskel and Ebert, to advertise the film, because the same people who were going to see it in the first place were, they'd crawl through, 50 feet of broken glass to see it. I mean, it just didn't really matter. David probably thought it was going to be a bigger box office success than it was domestically, but we have our champions and our fans, as it were, or whatever. It was a difficult film to parse for a lot of people. And you're right in a sense, overall, in that there were some very smart people who went to see that movie and thought that we were playing tricks on them. That we were doing this just to infuriate them, or to tease them. It was nothing of the kind. As I said, we were doing something quite serious, and with real gravity, and like I say, it was a psychogenic fugue, and that's what we were portraying. I mean, there are some other little things that go on in there, like the coda, for example, but basically, it's really, a true condition. And, I think it took people by surprise. It startled people. But I remember the Spanish director, Bigas Luna, who was a wonderful person. He wrote me a letter after he had seen the film, and he said the first 45 minutes of Lost Highway is the most frightening film I've ever seen in my life. So different people had different reactions. In fact, it was Michael Haneke a few years ago stole the entire beginning in his film Caché and didn't pay tribute at all to Lost Highway. He just lifted it, with people receiving videotapes of their lives and not knowing who had done that. That's an outright, theft. So anyway, I consider that flattering. If somebody steals or thinks enough of what you've done to steal from you, great going.
That's right. Plagiarism is the ultimate, most sincerest form of flattery.
Well, yes, and I'm serious about it. I consider it an homage.
Oh, yeah, that's all you need to do, really, is just plagiarize and put the word homage, and you're set. You're good to go.
Well, I to tell you the truth, I never gave it a second thought. I mean, it's interesting, when things, come my way about novels or whatever, or about films, and I'm sure Dave is similar in the sense. And by the way, I think he had a kind of rapprochement with Ebert later on. Ebert came around, and I think whatever the differences were annealed, which is nice to know. But I never had anything to do with Ebert. And Gene just by happenstance. Gene Siskel. And anyway, like I say, you can't worry about this stuff too much. You just have to go on and do your work and not try to explain. It's not worth it in the end.
Precisely, yeah. And now, of course, you and David worked previously on Wild at Heart, which was your novel that he adapted. Did you know David prior to that, or how did you guys meet?
No, he called me up one day and said, I want to make a movie out of your novel. And at that point, it was in galleys, bound galleys, and about to be published by Grove Press. And I said, okay, when do you want to do it? And he said, right now. And he was actually filming the pilot for Twin Peaks at the time, which was called Northwest Passage. And no, I did not know David beforehand, but I was friends with Monty Montgomery, who was one of the producers of Wild at Heart. And Monty was a collector of my books and stopped by to see me in San Francisco on his way up to Washington State, where they were filming what became Twin Peaks. And that was all. Then Dave called me, and the rest was history. And then I think the next thing we did was Hotel Room for HBO, and then we did Lost Highway. And we had a couple of other things in between, which didn't ultimately fly.
Did you ever get around to seeing the Lost Highway opera?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. I saw it in Graz, Austria, where it debuted. The premiere was there, and at the last minute, Dave couldn't go, but I flew over. They flew me over there, and met Olga Neuwirth, who'd done the music, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What am I thinking? Was that one? No, I'm sorry. I get these things mixed up. Or maybe that was it. I can't keep these things straight. Was it there that we saw the Lost Highway one? But anyway, Olga is a hoot. She's a wonderful person and a brilliant composer. And she was so enamored of the movie that basically what she wanted to do was write a score for the film. But the film was already made. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So the thing was, so she did the best, she could by doing it that way. That's right. Yeah, that was the debut, was in Graz, because I was thinking about the performance in New York at the Miller Theater, which was subsequent to that.
Very cool. Now, for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with your novels, if you had to kind of recommend some of your books as a starting point to kind of get familiar with your writing, which books would you recommend for them to pick up and read?
That's always a tough question, but I think that, since we're talking about, Wild at Heart, at least partially, there's the Sailor and Lula novels, which is a big omnibus now, which contains 7 of the Sailor and Lula novels in the saga, and then this past, which is just called Sailor and Lula, the complete novels. And this January, an 8th was published, The Up Down, which is the story of their son, Pace. And so I'd say that's one way to start. And then I think the other side of my fiction is in a big book of stories called The Roy Stories, which is quite different. And so I think those are really the places to start. And then, of course, there's much more, but I think that's it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, Barry, do you have any idea who Guadalupe Hearst is?
Guadalupe Hearst?
She gets that. There's a special thanks to for Guadalupe Hearst for being a trooper in the credits of Lost Highway. Does that name mean anything to you?
It doesn't strike a bell right now, but it must have been, somebody who helped David in some way, who assisted David, and he was thanking for her participation. But I right off the bat, no.
Just curious.
So that's the biggest mystery of the movie, who Guadalupe Hearst is, and that's what we're going to try to find out.
Yes, that's been driving me insane since '97.
Ask David.
That's the next step. Yeah,
Just ask him. No, it's a great name, but I don't know who Guadalupe Hearst was. At least I don't remember now.
Oh, very great.
All right, Barry, I have one final question. How many car lengths are needed to stop a car traveling 35 miles per hour?
5.
That was a simple answer.
Yeah, good job.
Am I right?
Mr. Eddie would have no problem with you.
Well, I might have a little problem with Mr. Eddie. I'd really... but that's it. Those are the only questions about Lost Highway you guys have. That's great. That's wonderful. So you understand the whole thing. You guys did your PhD theses on Lost Highway. That's what I love. I love the people that explain stuff. I'll just leave you with one thing. My son, who was then going to UC San Diego, took a class on Lost Highway. A French professor this is true, a French professor was giving a class on Lost Highway. And he didn't realize until somebody told him later, after, the end of the semester or the quarter, whatever they have there, that my son was in the class. And they had to write about it and all. And as my son, Asa, had been, in fact, in the preview audience for Lost Highway to recommend, maybe what should, be cut or this, that, or the other. He was very close. And in fact, we had his 21st birthday party at Dave's house. And, so he was very close to the project. In any case, he got an A in the class, as it turned out. But after the class was done, I had no idea what he wrote about it. But later, the professor, when he found out that Asa had been in his class, he contacted him and gave him an article that he had written for some French publication, I think. I don't remember, but translated then, because David doesn't read French. And pointed out all these things in it, that there was exactly the same amount of time on screen as Fred Madison and Pete Dayton, which I didn't know. I don't even think David realized it. I might be wrong there, but I don't think so. And just his exegesis on the film, and explaining this and that, and he asked my son. He said, "Well, would you ask your dad and David if they would be willing to talk to me, to answer my questions about the film?" He said right off, "They won't talk to you."
You raised
But I
your
talked
son
to you
well.
guys. I talked to you guys.
See, that is
So-
such a privilege. We really feel great about that now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, anyway, I mean, I have to say, we really appreciate your interest, your, continuing interest, and I understand you guys have a great podcast and a great following. What's the title of your show? What do you call it? Movies and Stuff? I have a note here.
That is Movies and Stuff. Yep.
Is that what it is? I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't know anything about podcasts. I don't even own a computer. I have an assistant who does. Believe me, I'm not holier than thou. I certainly do email and do all this, but through an amanuensis, otherwise known as an assistant. And so when they first asked me about this, about participating in a podcast, I said, "What's a podcast?" And I was thinking of, the pods and invasion of the body snatchers. So, anyway, this is good. You guys broke my cherry.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
that's awesome too, because we kind of fancy ourselves as like just old-timey radio personalities. Really, we have these giant microphones that look like the old 20s microphones, just to make us feel like we've transported back in time to do a radio broadcast back then. So I'm glad that you joined us on this journey today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to speak to the click and clack of the movie world.